This episode is brought to you by Audit Shield, the service that protects CPA firms when the CRA comes calling. Audit Shield ensures every hour you spend responding to audits or reviews is fully covered.
Welcome to our AJAG PD Pod, the place for discussion, debate, and learning about all things accounting. Our hosts, Ivan Tabak, Jonathan Tucker, are CPAs that have been in practice for more than 3 decades. Together, they bring varying experience and viewpoints to the table, not to mention a little humor, too. Join us as we talk through current issues and hot topics, tap into expert guest insights, and enjoy the odd walk down AJAG memory lane. Before we begin today's podcast, please note, although the educational material within the podcast has been carefully prepared, none of the persons involved in the preparation of the material accepts any legal responsibility for its contents or for any consequences arising from its use. As well, the podcast material and the references contained therein may reflect laws and practices that are subject to change. Advice regarding a particular fact or situation should always be reviewed by a qualified professional. This podcast is produced and distributed by AJAG Professional Development. For more information about AJAG or any of its offerings, please visit ajag.ca.
Welcome to Season 3, Episode 4 of the AJAG PD Pod. I'm Ivan Tabak.
And I'm Jonathan Tucker.
And today we're pleased to be joined by Anshul Kaushik, Managing Director of Ryzolv. And we're going to be talking about AI. Welcome, Anshul.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So why don't you just start off, give us a little bit about yourself, your company, your background, and then we'll get into
Sure.
the weeks.
So Ryzolv is a company we initiated about a year ago. Our focus is around AI consulting and AI delivery. We came to understand this. This was a effective and changing trend within organizations today, and how to help organizations utilize AI to, gain operational efficiency.
Okay. And what's your background?
My background is I have a tech background, predominantly in cybersecurity. Originally, I started in deploying large enterprise solutions and then shifted to sales because I understood the tech so well that I could talk to customers in a very different approach. And then I decided to go back over the last couple of years to what was foundational for me, right? I understand tech. Let's combine it with new tech, AI, and let's help customers grow.
So why don't you give us let's start with a big overview. As we were talking about earlier, what is AI? And in understandable snippets, how does it work? And then we'll get into how it can be applied to accounting firms, who are our main audience here.
Okay, absolutely. I always like to go back to the basics, right? What is AI? Obviously, the term stands for artificial intelligence, but what is that today? What does that mean today? Today, if I break it up, I'll break it up like layers of a cake, right? The base layer, which I would call LLMs, large language models. Treat them as engines that do things, right? Very clear. So today, 2 major vendors in this space, 2 major companies that are there are OpenAI, right? Which is more so known commercially as ChatGPT, or Anthropic, which is again known as Claude. There are others, for example, Meta, which is Facebook's, has their own, and Grok, which is SpaceX, whatever you want to call it, right? Those are 2 other ones. There's other open source ones, and then there's other nationalistic ones, meaning these are more United States focused. The ones I just spoke about, there are ones from China as well, right? Quen from, I think what it started from as Alibaba Corporation, right? So on the North American front, those are the 4 major ones: Claude, ChatGPT, Grok, and Meta, right? So those are the power beneath them. The engine is an LLM, which is a large language model, right? So fundamentally, what is a large language model, right? The base of the cake, what is that? We're very clear about this, and this is the first step that we educated people on. LLMs are probabilistic in nature, meaning the math, the algorithms, all of that is derived from probabilistic methods. So LLMs are not deterministic, they're probabilistic. what does that mean? So if I give you an example saying, what is the capital of Canada? Ella will say, what you'll see is Ottawa, right? For example. But let's go back and say, hey, if I look at the LLM, what made that decision? There was Ottawa, there was Toronto, there's Montreal, there's Vancouver. Ottawa is 91%. That is the capital. Montreal might be 75%. Toronto might be 64%. Vancouver might be 30%. Ottawa is 91%. So yes, that should be the answer. That's how it's thinking. That's how the engine is fundamentally today working, in a probabilistic manner, right? Not a deterministic manner, a probabilistic manner.
Are they all work?
Yes, this is fundamental math.
Okay.
So it goes back so as you asked me earlier, I do actually have a math background, right? Math was something that, again, came very similarly easy to me. So if I look at, they're based on they're a subsidy of something called the Markov chain. It is an algorithm that was developed by Markov, Russian mathematician who developed this. Very similar to, if you're familiar with Google, right? Google search, you get web pages. It's called a PageRank algorithm, which is also based similarly on the Markov chain, meaning it's an extension of that. LLMs are very similarly based on the Markov chain, right? That's, if I called it most of the simplest perspective. So Markov was probabilistic. He was predicting the next thing, predicting the next word, predicting, very similarly when you type on your Apple iPhones the next word. That's, again, it's the greater extension or a stronger extension of that in the simplest form.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And yes, today, all of them are based on this. All of them. Doesn't matter whether it's these four or the next four, if the math behind all of them is the same.
It is.
Right.
So logically, the question is, why, for certain questions that you might ask, there are answers, right? There's no question Ottawa is the capital. So why can't the model be fed with that data point, saying if somebody asks this is the answer, period. No, it doesn't have to be ranked. You don't have to think about it. That's the answer. As opposed to, what's the weather going to be? And then then you go into probabilities. Like, why does the model work on probabilities for a question where there is an answer?
So the simplest way to answer is because the math that was built around this from a delivery perspective was just this math. It was probabilistic math, right? So there's no, unless I go create new math that addresses determinism, I can't really change that behavior.
And the system can't handle both elements at the same time?
Or does it handle it? Because when you put in Ottawa as the capital, it ranks that at 100, and therefore brings up the answer up in a mathematical.
But for it to do that, there would have to be a data point in there saying that
this is
100%,
right? And
so
that would weight it.
So you would have two sets of operations. One, these are facts, and here's where you work on probabilities. But you're saying it doesn't. It's the whole thing is probability. But why? I don't know. A lot to me.
I didn't mention it. So what I can tell you is that that's the supporting fundamental mathematics behind it, right? My assumption is it allows it to scale at such a rate. We probably don't have deterministic mathematics today to address this. There are individuals who have come out, right? So I'm forgetting the name, but one of the famous individuals that actually recently left Meta said, hey, this isn't the right way to address it. Now he's actually going out and researching fundamentally new ways to address this particular problem. Now, as far as determinism is concerned, right, there are ways to achieve it. I'm not saying 100%, but there are ways to achieve it, but it's outside of the tool. So the next layer of the cake is what we call generative AI. Generative AI means I am generating something for you, basically, whether it's text, whether it's image, whether it's voice, anything, right? It's generative AI. That's what we're now used to. Hey, I go to ChatGPT. Can you generate me? Can you please give me this image? Can you write me this email? Can you create this voice, right? Video, voice, whatever you want. Generative AI. That's with that. So there's other tools that now you start to layer on top of the engine to get certain results. Now, again, if you're talking about determinism, there's something that you tend to utilize. It's a more technical term, a retrieval of augmented knowledge, right? RAG. This is a set of knowledge base, set of databases that you utilize to create determinism. So the LLM goes, talks to this, retrieves knowledge from the RAG, and then outputs an answer. That generally tends to create more of that deterministic answer. The other way to do that is something called fine-tuning a model, right? Fine-tuning meaning I go fix it as much as I can, or I try to make it as deterministic as possible. Those are two approaches to try and get determinism. RAG is a more popular approach because it's your database, your things. It's based on you, maybe a company, or you as a person that functions in a certain way. Fine-tuning is a large and more expensive exercise, right? I'm taking this large model, fine-tuning it to get better results, right? So most organizations today tend to follow RAG because it is getting them better results. It's bringing them close to determinism as best possible. As you've seen, as the models have improved, 4.1, 4.5, whatever you want to call them, they are getting better. And it is because they're being fine-tuned from the vendors. We're using other technologies. So again, layer of the cake, you go from LLM, which is the engine. Now you go to generative tools, right? Which is generative AI. The next is something called Copilot. I'm not referring to Microsoft's Copilot per se, but that is a Copilot, generally speaking.
Is that an agent?
So no, it is what I'd call a wrapper around the thing to say, hey, these are the things I can do, but I need your suggestion and your approval to do it. Right? It's suggestion and approval. Write me this email. Okay, I wrote you this email and I gave you 3 suggestions on this email, right? 3 versions of it. Now you pick which one suits you, or you tell me how to improve this. Right? That's what copilots are. They tend to be wrappers, meaning copilots can exist in Excel, right? Or Microsoft as a whole, or organizations tend to have their own copilots, right? Where they exist on utilizing one of these models to do that.
People will have seen Copilot as a brand.
Yeah, people see Copilot as a brand,
but you're saying, that's a
fundamental. That's a very good marketing strategy for Microsoft.
Yeah.
But Copilot actually means it's a wrapper.
I see. Okay.
Right. It's in term is, hey, I could have a, what are the famous accounting, like QuickBooks is the one that comes to mind for a tax Copilot, right? It's a wrapper around QuickBooks using an LLM to address your
or in the Microsoft family of products you
it's
have.
literally Copilot, right? And that's what it is. It's using different models. If you have the option of choosing a different model in the background, you can choose OpenAI. Today, I think you can also choose Anthropic, right? So but it's a Copilot. It's a wrapper around that to function your way. Now, you said something called agents. What are agents? That's the next layer up. Agent is agentic AI, let's call it that, it reasons, it thinks, it researches, and outputs. All right? So it's doing it itself. It's, yes, you can have a human in the loop, but the ideal goal is that it now does this exercise all on its own. Right? Meaning, I don't have to write too many prompts. I don't have to make suggestions. I say, hey, I need you to research this topic. I need you to think this through. I need you to be aware of the context and then give me a result. So it's, again, simplest form, that's what it's doing across the board. That's what, it's not one agent. It'll be multiple agents that happen to talk to each other that make this function and go through. right? To give you, again, an output. So that's what agents are. It's a step above Copilot where you go to almost self-delivery versus just suggestion and improvement.
Prompts. Yeah. So when you're talking about large language models, and for those that aren't used to this world of AI, things like security of information. So if I want to draft an email to a client using AI, like where does my information go? Do I need to be worried about security? Are some of these like layers more prone to breaches than others? How do we think about this? Should we be creating our own enterprise license so that we're containing this data? How do we approach this, Anshul?
So security is a very broad topic
Yeah.
in AI today.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, for AI, not just in AI, but for AI. It's a very, very broad topic. So this is something that we tend to, at Ryzolv, we tend to specialize in, right? We tend to bring out what we call a governance layer, right? And we focus on regulated industries. What does that mean? It means pharma, it means financials, it means banking, it means anywhere where there's sensitive data, right? Speaking in terms of, from a CPA perspective, accounting perspective, you almost have to take an approach of splitting things down. What is administrative work, or what are things that do not require personal financial data, and what are things that do? Right? That's the most basic thing that you can do when you think of doing something, right? Is, hey, so if you are on just the general commercial terms, even with Microsoft Copilot or ChatGPT or Claude, you have to be careful. Why? Because you've signed general commercial terms. That means any data could be trained on, could be utilized for training, or even keeping a hold of, right? And it goes wherever their data centers are, wherever you're needing to, and we don't know that at this point in time from a commercial tool perspective. So yes, you are exposing that. And from a legal perspective, from a PIPEDA perspective in Canada, you are actually, as accountants, as financial advisors, lawyers, you name it, you're liable for that. It is a liability.
So one of the questions that people should be thinking about, and this came from my IT company, was before you make a decision about using an AI tool, there's some questions to ask. One of which is, where's that data going to reside? And we're just drawn to it because of the convenience and the appeal of it. It gives us access to information. But if that lands outside of Canada somewhere, if it lands in the United States, for example, then there's risks to that data being somewhere else.
Yeah.
Sure. And so we don't think of that naturally, but it's a question that ought to be asked.
But when you're putting a question to it, a tax question, you're not, or asking it to draft an email explaining whatever situation.
As long as there's no
your client name.
Well,
right?
Yeah.
I mean,
General
a situation
versus
is a situation.
But I'll give you an example though. When you're using Copilot in email,
right,
all of that information's there. You're responding to an email, you say, draft my response. It's drafting it based on all the information. You're not going to go through and remove it. It's encapsulated it within that email. So where does that sit?
Right. Well, so either you take the easy way and just say, here's the email I got with my client's address and name, etc., or just copy and paste the text without that.
So walk us through that.
Okay. Well, so there's a couple of things, right?
Yeah.
From a Microsoft perspective, what I'm assuming is when you're saying email, you're talking about Microsoft perspective.
Yeah.
There's something called Copilot governance. Now, I'm very specifically speaking around Microsoft technology when I refer to Copilot at the moment.
Their brand of called Copilot is what you're talking about here.
Yeah. There are Microsoft as a company offers you tools and solutions where you can invoke governance on your Copilot usage. Meaning, hey, am I sending this out, this type of data, these type of things? Again, it requires a tool in their suites,
Yeah.
right? Very clearly. And the ability to apply those policies and so forth in that, so it protects you from that. Microsoft, because it's a wrapper, it's a Copilot wrapper, and it's situated and it talks to their other tools, it actually has security benefits, right? From a commercial use perspective, meaning a business use perspective, if you look to do some of the basic things that Microsoft recommends, or some of the key things that Microsoft says, hey, you should go buy this to protect your security and things, you're actually very covered for that, right? Again,
You covered from what?
from a governance perspective, that there is no data leakage,
Okay.
right? Microsoft's obviously in Canada has the data centers in Canada. Right.
So that was going to be my next question. Where is that work going on? Is it going on
Microsoft
in
Canada?
Servers Canada?
Yes, I believe it's Vancouver and closer to the Quebec, Montreal area.
Okay.
Right? They do make this. It's an option when you choose to set up when you go buy, like for example, we have Copilot. We use Microsoft. I've chosen, I think I chose a data center in Quebec, right? That's where my instance is. That's what it's called. It's an instance. It's in Quebec. It's backed up in Vancouver, and so forth. And we apply certain policies using Microsoft tools to make sure that, hey, if I'm reviewing an email from a client, so forth, it has a confidential information. I'm mindful for that in general, but I'm a human being. Right? Mistakes happen. There are governance aspects set up in it, saying, hey, warnings, or what it's called DLP, it's data loss prevention. I'm not leaking any of this out. So I'm doing the best possible to cover myself, right? From an incident. Again, best possible. Security is not 100%, but it's best possible. So in the Microsoft world, and also you can do this in Google's world as well, depending on which path you choose. If you took the Gmail path, or Google Workspace as they call it, again, data centers in Canada, right? You have their tools, so you can use Gemini, and same type of governance around Gemini that they offer right out of the gate, right?
We're now getting into specialized types of AI. So for tax research tools and things like that, which falls outside of those spaces. What should we be thinking about when we're looking at those kind of tax research tools?
So if you're talking about just research, just tax research, law research, and things, I think if if I stack rank my personal opinion on what tool I've used for great research, I would say Google Gemini, probably one of the best from a research perspective. Simply why? Because Google has owned the internet forever. Right? It has.
But I'm not going to go there for a tax question. I want to go to something where it's an LLM that is just built
specifically
for tax.
So
I mentioned this because I signed up for a service last year for this because I saw it and thought, wow, that's fantastic. I have to have that. And then after I signed up for it, I talked to my IT guy and he said, before you sign up next time, there's a few things you ought to know about this. Like, here's a checklist of questions that you will want to run through, or I can help you run through that. By the way, that particular service, the data is hosted in the United States. And we have trade wars. And one of the trade war tools that could be done is they can shut down that service, and all of our information is now sitting in another country. And although it may be anonymous, it's still a consideration. Had I known that, I might not have signed up as quickly as I did for that, because I didn't even think to ask that question.
Yeah, so it's an interesting thing. And this one, I'm going to take this a little bit back, right? What does it mean as a Canadian? Right? Are we developing the tools in-house? In-house means our country.
Our country,
Our sovereign as a nation. Doing that today? I don't think so. We aren't, right? But does that mean we leave everybody behind, as in our population? We're trying to do our best as a nation, right? Because
we only got 40 million compared to...
well, still, right? We are seeing sovereign, what we call national sovereign AIs coming out for nations, right? It's very clear. We've seen it for the United States. We have seen it for China. We have now seen it for India. We have now seen it a couple of European nations, but these are the 4 or 5. Obviously, I'm sure Russia has something too. But we are clearly seeing that nations are building these capabilities in-house to serve
Their population.
yeah, to serve their population.
Yeah.
And I think, especially as Canadians, what we're going through right now, we should start really considering this.
Yeah.
Right? This is what we should be funding from an AI perspective. All right? Because, hey, I would prefer to use that. Just prefer to use that, right?
At this point, I think it's something people ought to be aware of
Yes.
as they're drawn into AI,
Yes.
because it is so.
So,
appealing.
but I go back to your question. You know, I've heard about this very specifically now. Niche-oriented, vertical-oriented AI LLMs kind of coming out. So these are the things. There's various companies that come out, right? But if you're doing this from a research perspective, just research, not company, like not client name, not client information, that's a little different, right? We don't actually need those tools.
Well, here, I'll give you an application. A memo comes from a lawyer.
Yeah.
And it's a 40-page memo.
Okay.
What are the tax issues? You can attach that file into a tax research tool. It's got every name in it.
Yeah.
Are you going to go through and redact that? No. This is a potential transaction. Before I'm going to put that in, I'm going to make sure there's no identifying features. Well, I got to go through every single page. That's where these tools would be helpful.
All right. Now I understand the problem better.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
This is something we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
This is something that we do as a firm.
Yeah.
We have now started to practice this really well.
Yeah.
Let's go back to what we talked about, large language model.
Yes.
It's literally called large language model.
Yes.
So from a basic marketing perspective, everybody wants you to use a large language model.
Yes.
Right? Because they're a company, their profits, so forth.
I'd like my own large language model.
So, okay, you don't necessarily need a large language model. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Do you need it to speak 37 languages?
True. No.
Right? I'm assuming predominantly, let's say your firm is working across Canada.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Do you need it to know U.S. tax law? Do you need it to know Chinese tax law? Do you need to know European tax law?
Yeah.
Again,
No, fair
majority of the time, you need it to know Canadian tax law from a federal perspective.
Yeah.
Then you need to know provincial tax law, because I'm also assuming that, hey, your clients are spread out.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not, but maybe they're spread out.
That's
right?
fair. Yeah.
Right. And tax law for the federal, and then accounting practices for Canada, federally and provincially.
Yeah.
That's what you need to know, right?
Yeah.
So, and you need to know, because we're Canadian, English and French.
Yeah.
Right? 2 languages.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If I go and break it down in technical terms, a large language model is generally defined as something with 250 billion data points and more, right? As it's called.
Yeah.
ChatGPT, as we refer to it, is above 500 billion, right?
Wow.
So here's the question. I think you need something that's 26, maybe 70 billion.
Okay.
Right? Depending, I'm taking a wild guess.
Yeah.
But so that's referred to as a small language model.
Yeah.
That's something you can actually choose to host in a data center in Canada.
Yeah.
For your firm.
Yeah.
Or you can set up servers in your organization, buy the right appropriate gear, and set it up.
Yeah.
Will it be as fast as ChatGPT? I can't promise that.
Yeah.
But now
It'll be secure.
it's contained.
Yeah.
It's what we call sovereign AI.
Yeah.
Right? Or a sovereign language model.
Yeah.
It's, you are a firm that's addressing this country. You're a firm that's very specifically, right?
Yeah.
We've defined your parameters.
Yeah.
Now the parameters say you don't really need a large language model. You need a small language model.
Yeah.
Maybe you're a bigger firm than that, but
Yeah.
you still don't need a large language model.
Yeah.
You need something that you can host.
Yeah.
And then you can also define it. Let's say you want to go further. I'll give you a personal example. And this is what people don't know, right?
Yeah.
People aren't understanding the technology this way. I have a very good laptop, which is a very nice laptop.
Yeah.
Right? Because day-to-day work is extensive.
Yeah.
I need it for work. I like to write articles, but I can't sit there write, 2,000 character word articles. but I have good ideas. I pen them down. I still do paper pencil, right? And think things through. I noticed that the models, when I asked them to write, they were writing as not me, right? Or very unrealistically. When I say unrealistically, it had a great vocabulary, which I do not.
And I find that for me, it's, it uses rosy language. I would never say that. And I'm always correcting.
I'm a very short sentenced, direct person, right? That's a good part of how I write. So I downloaded a very small model because I speak English predominantly, right? That's it. I write in English 100% of the time. I know. This is my parameter. My model was 100 million data points. You know where it sits? It sits on my laptop. I take what I want, I tell it to read, and then give me the text back. Right? And it writes in, because I took all my emails, all the things that I wrote over the years.
And so it started to understand.
Well, I just fed it. I just fed it. I was like, it took me like a week to do this, right? Because it was slow, right? But a week, it's when I say a week, carved out hours over a week, not a full week. But it took me a week or so to do this. And now it writes in my tonality, right? It's in my voice, so-called. I trained it on those things. I fed it data from my emails. I fed it data from this. And it sits on my laptop.
Where's the data sit?
On my laptop.
Just on your laptop. So what happens if your laptop's stolen?
So physical security is beyond the probability of human, right? Like I can't, someone's got something.
I would presume you have a backup.
Yeah, I have a backup.
That's right.
Wow.
But my data, that's something that you as a human being can't help, right? It can happen. You left it behind somewhere, you forgot it, it got stolen. Those are far-fetched things that I cannot physically try to address. But what I can address is, hey, I don't want those guys knowing my tone. I want me knowing my tone. I don't, now, if I want to write an email, I use this model that sits on my laptop and I give it the prompt, and it then goes and writes in my nature. Again,
so let's just take that back to what we're talking about, our audience here, which is now I've got a whole list of client emails where there's been questions that have come in. What about this tax question? What about that tax question? I've generated responses over time. I don't need to rewrite that email necessarily because I've already addressed that in 3 or 4 other ones in certain contexts.
Okay.
So will it be able to now draw from that and give me a proposed draft to say, here's my response?
No.
Okay.
I mean, yes and no.
Okay.
But I predominantly say no. Now understand that any model, so one of the biggest gaps currently with models, not with models, but with organizations, is models required structured data. There's a very specific method on how you train the model, right? It's called chunking, to be very clear. So it learns how to prompt better, right? And prompt accurately. So you have to train it. Now, to get that trained model, you have to go through data cleansing process, right? And what you just described, email data, or communications of tools like Slack or chatting tools, is called unstructured data. Now, I have to take this unstructured data, make it structured, and then make it structured for the LLM to learn off of. So I did that process in-house because I had those emails very clearly when I taught it to do that. And I took enough emails from me and structured them first. Hey, question, response, question, response. Then I structured them from a chunking perspective for the LLM, right? That process needs to happen. So ideally what you're doing is you're creating a knowledge database on your history of responses to the questions. You have to do that. That's generally where, if I refer to a term called RAG, right, retrieval, you're creating that RAG database.
I see.
Right, you have to create that for the LM to talk to say, hey, this knowledge database now exists. I now know how to respond to it. LLM is just an engine that has the capability of doing things when it's proposed with the right tools. It's not just, hey, it can go do it. It's what you see as an end result. That's not what it is. When you bring this down to a level of, hey, I need to do this. You can't just feed it emails and hope it's going to do something called hallucinate. It's going to hallucinate a lot. There's no probability in that, right? It's like, I don't know if the answer to this is accurate.
Ottawa or Montreal.
Yeah, there's no probability. So the likelihood of it making a mistake, if you're just feeding it,
Very high.
right? So doing that is tough. So you need to train it. Like, you need to give it the right data in the right structure in the right way. It's a data cleansing process, right? There's two terms for this. It's data engineers, right? Data engineering, and then AI data engineering. Data engineering means cleaning the data up, proposing it, and then AI data engineering is cleaning it up for an AI tool, right? Two different processes that exist today. So most firms, not just small but large, this is one of the biggest challenges in the industry. You've got history of data, which you have not parsed or cleaned, right? Those questions are buried on what? Let's say 10, 15 years of emails, right? And that's great knowledge, but not structured to be effective on.
So let's take a step back and see if we can make it practical for accountants and firms who don't have any, internal use of AI, aside from just the public access to ChatGPT and whatever, right? But if a firm wanted to explore how to implement AI within their infrastructure, what would be the first step? And practically speaking, how would they take, what would be the progression of steps for them to get something useful for themselves and then build on it going forward?
So in my mind, the first step is you have to use the commercial tools. What I mean by that is use them for a day-to-day purpose that does not expose client information or sensitive data, but practice, right? Because here's a funny thing. I can give the same questions to all 4 different, ChatGPT, Meta, wouldn't get 4 different answers, right? Practice in understanding what you're asking and what it's delivering. You can open different chat windows in the same GPT and it'll give you different answers, right? So it's the smallest thing. It's take bites at a time, practice. What does this actually do? What does this actually mean? Does it answer my question? Hey, what's the accounting law for this? What's this? How does it apply in Ontario? You can start by general, then go more specific in your field and keep doing that and start to understand, hey, because you're the expert, right? You're the domain expert. You know if what it stated is true or false. And then you'll start to find out, hey, there's inaccuracies, or no, this is highly accurate, right? Just from a research perspective, basic perspective, nothing, again, you carved out. Then you start to look at, other financial other companies that offer tax type of GPTs and so forth in doing so, right? Like, example is, if you use something like ChatGPT, it has something called GPTs in it. And there are actually things called tax GPTs. Not a company, but it's named for that specific profession as a GPT. So a certain set of rules that somebody made from a tax perspective. So when you ask it questions around tax, let's say Canadian tax GPT, let's call it that, right? You build it, you get it done, you start asking it questions. It should give you better answers. I mean, that's what they're for. So I would suggest always start using it on a regular daily basis to understand what this tool does. Then as a next step after that, you start to understand, hey, what are my uses as a company? All right. So again, divide it into non-essential information and essential information. I don't want to touch essential information. I do want to touch and take over. Okay. Hey, it's tax season. I'm fully booked all the time. People are calling to book meetings with me. This is tough, even for, if you have someone who's assisting you and so forth, it's still tough for them to do it because they're looking at the calendar all the time. This is where an AI agent can come and help and just look at your calendar. These are open. These are the options to book, right? There's various tools that do this, or you can build it on your own and just look at your Microsoft calendar saying, hey, these things are open. These are availabilities. I work from 9 to 10 or 9 to 5, whatever it is. This, again, takes simple steps that allow you to do that. Now, once you look at going to the essential route, that's where things change, right? That's kind of where firms like us come in. We do advisory on helping you understand and mapping all this out, what is essential, where you can go, how you can block. There's always two routes. It's the sovereign AI route, meaning in-house, in my data center, in my organization, or I want to be really fast. Okay, then there's what we call guardrails around and protocols around using ChatGPT, Anthropic, Grok, whichever one you prefer, and so forth, right? We can put in a lot of guardrails to still get faster, accurate information done for you if you're comfortable with that, right? That's where you do need that technical advisory step to help you understand and assess. Once you have looked to master the day-to-day stuff and the basic stuff, how do you take it to your firm? How do you make it more deterministic for your firm? Where are the things that we can do this out? How do I test out these workflows, as we call them, right? Meaning I'm calling to do this, I'm calling to.
So one of the workflows that because just to your point is, well, how does this work, find its way into the workflow during the day? So one of the things we've been working with is we take all these slips that have different information, and staff are always kind of cutting and pasting them into a PDF that has all of the documents. You probably do that when you're doing a T1. And so, you have all this information that's come from a client. And it takes a staff person quite a while to come up with that final file so that they've got all the information from the client, and now it's in a nice PDF so that it's organized, and then you can review the return because that's the basis. And then we have another file called did not use, and it's a separate PDF so that the reviewer can look at both and say, okay, well, why didn't you include that T4? Why is there a T4 sitting in the did not use? So it enhances our ability to say, okay, well, here's all the information. Some got used, some didn't. So it's creating, but it takes time to do that. And it's a repetitive function. And so it's like, well, can we not automate that so that it will create the same document that one of our staff takes half an hour, 45 minutes to create versus just have that automatically created? That's an example of how we can take a task that's a repetitive task and say, all right, there you go. There's the information. Sort it and create 2 files for me. Did not use. Now, the preparer isn't preparing anymore. They're verifying.
Yeah.
They're now looking at the information and saying, no, that slip belongs up there. Move that up there. So that's an example of that.
So you've done something that's.
So what are those tasks within the day that are repetitive that could be then? That's how I look at this.
Yeah. So you just did something that most people aren't doing.
Right.
You identified what we call a use case.
Yeah.
Right. And as a firm that's coming in externally, I don't know your use case. Yeah. I would generally have to sit there with you on a day-to-day basis and understand that. So I do not know that.
Yeah.
What you just defined is that use case of a repetitive task. Yeah. Those are the first things that you should really be looking at is, hey, and if I'm a business owner, right, I'm thinking of, hey, what's the cost of this repetitive task? Yeah. Is it just time, or is it time and money? And it's that exponentiates over a course of period of time. Yeah. Now that I understand that, I define that as a use case.
Yeah.
Right. And I start doing that across my organization. Yeah. That's probably the best way to not do AI, but start the AI journey.
Right.
Is let's look at defining all these use cases that exist in my organization. Yeah. And then as you go from a more to an accounting, taxing perspective, then you got to really start defining, hey, what are the actual use cases? Where can I really do this faster? And you have to build towards that, from the most basic administrative to more complex tasks that really need this, right? And then you start mapping out the tools, technologies, methodologies that you will need. That's not your job. That's companies like ours' job, is where we come in and say, okay, these are the tools that we need to do this.
This has been part 1 of a 2-part podcast. Tune in next month to hear Ivan, Jonathan, and Anshul conclude this conversation.
Good to see you again, Jason. How you been?
Excellent, Jonathan. How about you?
Good. Today's topic was around AI. And for most of us in accounting firms, AI right now is around Copilot, ChatGPT, things like that. But from a CRA perspective, how are you seeing through Audit Shield AI affecting what CRA is doing and how that's impacting us on the firm end of things?
Yeah, and we're talking about AI readiness within the firm. That's the topic of discussion, but I think it's very important that we don't overlook just how the CRA has shifted their reliance on, automation, data analytics, and of course these AI-assisted compliance activity. I mean, the fact that they're reoriented to an extent in how they're conducting their reviews. Look, there's numerous mentions of their commitment to making these adjustments. It's already happening, as we know. On their website. Let me give you a couple of examples, just a couple of articles recently laid up there on the site. There's one about the CRA's department plan to enhance, let me say that again. The department plan to enhance its use of AI tools to detect non-compliance. AI and processes automation will be leveraged. That's a direct statement. And then, of course, the Government of Canada's 2025 and 2027 AI strategy confirms that federal departments are expected to expand their operational usage of AI tools.
Well, I can tell you from our practice, we've noticed a marked increase with, like it would normally have been, June, July, we would start to see it. I think the first week of May, we had probably 4 inquiries, like straight away. It was like, and a couple of them were GST related and things like that. But it's like, wow, that's fast. Are we on their hit list or something, or is this just
and that's
the reality?
It's the misconception. It is absolutely not personal. It is profile driven. It is pattern driven. And you hit on something interesting too. You're definitely going to be seeing more of them, and this is most likely because of the usage of, again, the AI systematizing of the reviews, basically automation at scale through the use of these tools. Like you mentioned an increase. So we take a look at our year-over-year claims activity on a monthly basis. And what stood out to us this year in April was that we saw about a 350% increase in T1 post-assessment reviews. Now, not a shock.
350%.
Yeah, 350% increase, but not a shock that there is an increase because the CRA did mention as of April 10th that they are going to be conducting reviews year-round. Right? And so you'd be thinking to yourself, well, why is that?
Was there anything in that announcement, by the way? Because you mentioned April 10th. I'm sure a lot of people watching today didn't even see that announcement. What was in the announcement?
So that was shared with me by my claims manager. I can find more detail for you on that. But what stood out to us on that note that we received was, well, how are they able to do this if they have an increased capacity? Well, back to the topic at hand is definitely through the usage of AI tools, technology for sure, and using this automation at scale.
So how should firms think about this as being AI ready? If CRA is on that end, what are your suggestions or what are your observations about this?
Well, I mean, think historically, CRA interaction was something more event-driven, right? I think what we're seeing, certainly the firms that are more progressive-oriented, thinking, about how to be prepared for what is happening now and the increasing inevitability of the use of these tools is that you have to recognize that this is part of the new normal, right? Yeah. The way the CRA is conducting reviews is much more pattern and profile driven. Let me give you a couple of examples that you're probably familiar with. We know that the typical markers are, your expected ratios, your industry benchmarks, filing consistency, payroll patterns, so on and so forth, okay, that may trigger a review. So imagine all of these markers are now systematized through the use of technology, which naturally deliver a lot more touch points on the end, on the other side with the firm, right? And it's also the simultaneous nature in which these reviews are being conducted. So you could be working on a T1 processing review or, on foreign non-business tax, GST, HST, questions, trust, you name it. But it's the simultaneous nature in which these reviews are now being delivered to the firm.
Yeah. And you were saying before we got started on the video here that now these reviews are continuing throughout the year. We shouldn't just be expecting them in the summer, early fall, which is the time period that we tend
to see an increase in processing T1 post-assessment reviews from August all the way through to the end of the year. Yeah. Now what the CRA has said, I believe this is on their website as well, that you can expect these reviews to occur year-round, right? In conjunction with everything else that's on the go too, right?
From our perspective as a firm, one of the things that we're paying far more attention to now is in the tax software we're using. We're always going back to the what we call comp screens. We use comp 5 or comp 2, which means the 2-year comparable or 5-year comparable.
That's a good idea.
And we will look at the T1 at a high level for income items, and then even drill down into the 21-25 form. There's a comp 5 for that, and it'll show you, okay, is there any change here in terms of how we've allocated things on that schedule that's going to attract their attention? Are we using any of those other fields where it doesn't fit into that category? Because those are the types of things that, so we want consistency in reporting, right? And if you have a changeover in staff from one year to another, then the only way you can really control that is to send that person back and say, look at the last couple of years tax returns.
That's right.
For consistency, right?
And I mean, just to expand a little on that point, I think what we're talking about here is the necessity to really look inwardly about because there is this potential for added workflow pressure. So what you want to be doing is finding a way to increase the efficiencies on an operational level. And we're seeing a lot of that with the firms that have sort of accepted this as the new normal.
For us, for T1s, one of the things that we've done is kind of standardized how we ask clients to provide us with information now, because in the past, somebody might send in their spreadsheet and it's horrible, and somebody else sends in a spreadsheet and it's beautiful, but there's no consistency. Now we're sending it back to clients saying, no, this is how it needs to look. And we've done that because we want to be able to have an audit function. So when CRA says we want this information, we can just select on our spreadsheet and pull out those items. So that operationally, this is how we're starting to think. We're going to get a lot more inquiries here. But, from Audit Shield's perspective now, tell us how that's impacting things.
So, what we're seeing a lot of it, I thought this would be helpful with you, is that if we're talking about the adaptation of, to an environment where compliance systems themselves are becoming more automated, due to the scalability of it all, you want to be thinking about how you can be prepared for that. So we look at the firms that we're working with, and we have about 5 things, items that tend to dictate how well a firm is prepared in the event of a CRA review. Here's the 5 things that sort of stand out to us. Let me share this with you. There's our normalize, identify, document, decide, and process. What I mean by normalize, that's where you've got to let your clients know that, look, CRA reviews are part of the new normal. You've got your death, your taxes, and guess what? The third guarantee in life is now you're maybe likely to be audited. It's nothing against you. It's anything that we did. It's just the way that things are scaled now.
It's the rollout of technologies like AI.
That's right. The next one, identify high-risk profiles, those that are likely or at a higher likelihood to be reviewed. So, that means making sure that you have the documentation and to be prepared for that. To that point, documentation, like you want to document everything with a CRA review in mind, and keep these records, make them available. When it happens, the next one we have here is decide in advance how the CRA time is treated within the firm, and how you communicate that with your clients. Final point, obviously, is process around the unplanned, right? So it's, as we say, part of the new normal, part of the workflow. If you anticipate, you're going to be fine. And I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the reason why Audit Shield works well in a situation like this is because you do the work as you normally would in the event of a review, audit, or investigation. And instead of submitting the bill to your client, you submit it to us, and we get you paid generally within 2 to 3 days of having received the finalization letter. So peace of mind for your client and peace of mind for you, knowing that your professional time is covered.
Well, I think more and more firms are forced, just by the volume of this, to look at Audit Shield, or they're going to look to their clients to get their time recovered, and clients need to be educated on this.
Right.
It's not a reflection on the CPA doing the return. This is just the new reality.
Well, and more, the firms that we work with, they make their clients aware up front, whether it's in an engagement letter or what have you, that because there is this increase in CRA activity, our job to defend the position it's incremental work, right? So oftentimes it doesn't matter if the filing position hasn't changed. It's still that incremental professional time that does need to be recovered.
I'm just thinking of that stat of 350%.
I think we're going to start seeing this across the CPAR area reviews. GST, HST is something that we've been seeing consistently throughout the year. But imagine that. Imagine you've got your T1s, your T2s, your trusts, and so on, all increasing and being consistent throughout the year. Stands to reason that an operational workflow, an adjustment towards these AI tools is in order.
And for those that might have that are firms of Audit Shield, and for those that haven't, this might be an opportunity just to go back, just to point out, pieces like that release from CRA saying, these things are going to continue to as part of our rollout, and also the government statement that they were looking for fines and penalties as almost a line item on their budget.
That's right.
So this is the new reality. So really practical perspective on this. Thanks, Jason, for coming and giving us that. And AI isn't only about adapting new tools. It's also about preparing for where external compliance systems are becoming increasingly automated and data-driven. That's what we're seeing.
Yeah, and if I can just make one last point. In this age of AI and automation, I would argue that the relationship between the CPA and their client is more important than ever. Because it can be confusing to have to navigate automation and frustrating. Right? Your clients are still going to need interpretation, reassurance. They're going to need a strategy. They're going to need a trusted advisor. So I would say that working with a CPA and navigating these tools is probably more important than ever.
I think for those that recognize that, I think that's a really
for those that recognize.
I think that's a really important thing, because the temptation is to hide behind emails and lose those relationships, right, with clients. So anyway, well, thanks for joining us again. Always interesting, always practical.
Absolutely.
All right, take care. Thanks, everyone.